start with my debate, I would wish that you all should think for a while that how many times you've taken a decision for yourself and bear its severe consequences, yet the decision taken by your parents have fetched you with fruitful results. Good morning, everybody. I am Vishali Anand, and I am here to speak for the motion that parents are always right. Psychiatrists suggest that the first step, the first schooling starts from your house by your parents. They teach you how to walk, they teach you with every ethical and moral values. And one pretty day you all get up and say that you are wrong. 70% of the population suggests that parents are always right and should always be followed. Ladies and gentlemen, I strongly believe that no one can change their parents' opinion, but yes, they can change the way they respond to it. Every parent has different criteria. They have different principles of following their parenting rules. Like, one set of parents believe that, tough schooling is the best option for their child. One feels that a pretty expensive education is best gift they can bestow with their children. But are we anywhere thinking about where the parents are getting wrong? They're thinking for your own benefit. When we come up to the statistical ratios, more than half of the Indian population of senior citizens are resting in old age homes. This is all because of those people who believe that parents are always wrong. The major issues which are dealt with the families are due to the reason that the children grow out of childhood, but the parents never grow out of parenthood. There are about 65% of an increase in cases like rape, domestic violence, and cheat cases. And this is all because of those children who believe that their parents' advice was never required. At the end, I wish to conclude with the fact that never judge, you will never be judged. Do not condemn, you will never be condemned. Forgive, you will always be forgiven. Thank you.
I'm so sorry. 16-year-old committed suicide because he could not fulfill his parents' dream of cracking an engineering entrance. An innocent teenage daughter raped by her own father. We all are well aware about the uneven sex ratio of our country. Do we still say parents are always right? Greetings to one and all. Esteemed chairperson, today I, Abdul Goswami, stand vehemently against the motion. Parents usually think for the welfare of their children with mature mind and try to give their correct advice. But if they just want to impose their views with mere thinking that their children are bound to obey them in all circumstances, their advice becomes vitiated on certain occasions and can even hamper the career of the child. In that scenario, a child cannot prosper and make any progress. He cannot develop in forced, compelled situations. As far as their age and experience are concerned, parents are superior to their children. But their views are not always acceptable. Sometimes they think on their own way. They are not able to equate themselves with the mentality of their children. We all are aware that in modern times, parents are crazy about the education of their children. But it creates a debate between children and them. They want to fulfill their own requirements through their children. They want to fulfill those aims in their life which they were not able to fulfill. That creates an unbeatable pressure on their own children. It finds difficult for those who are not able to find out their own area of refreshment. I guess everybody sitting here, as my friends have earlier quoted, very well aware about Farhan Qureshi of Three Idiots and Rohan Singh of Padhan or Veer Tare Zameen Par. Do we still say, friends, parents are always right? Being right and thinking that you are right are two different things completely. If parents always think that you are right and force their children to follow what they feel. Friends, it may include grudges between parents and children. There can be a cold war between them. There can be an emotional war, and that even may lead to permanent cracks in the relationships. My friends have said, parents are the ones who nurture their kids, who grow them. I do not deny this. Completely agree. Yes, it is true. But friends, after all they say, nobody is perfect. Parents cannot be exception to this case. In the end, I would like to conclude that my friends have quoted the examples of Ranbir Kapoor, Kareena Kapoor, or be it Hamilton of F1 or Phelps. Friends, these are only ones. My nation, that it has been 65 years from independence, and 400 millions of my brothers and sisters, far to top of iPod and tabs. They're still starving for the primary needs of food, shelter, and health. Whom to blame them? Are not parents to be blamed even a little? Think over it. Parents are not always right, friends. Thank you.
Night, in this world so definite. When I break a plate, don't yell at me. I'm sorry if you are irritated. Just shift me to a place where old ones are inhibited. But may your future brightens up with success, and your shine will never be less. These are our parents, the most beautiful and the precious gift of God to us. In fact, it's rightly said, when God could not be everywhere, he thought of creating parents. In fact, in our Vedas, the parents are being compared to the holy position of God. But we say that they are wrong. Can they really be? No, not at all. They are always and always right. A very pleasant good afternoon to everyone present here. We all say that parents are imposing their wishes upon us. But don't we think that time has really changed now? Now, even they are much more concerned about our bills, be it in the field of academic, co-curricular activities like painting, dancing, or even modeling. In fact, the parents who are living in slums give their full support to their children. The daughter of the watchman of my apartment got selection in IIT only because of the support of her parents. We say that because of you we are trying to commit suicides. But is it really so? No, it's because of our tribulations. But what we are giving to them in the return of the food which they give us to eat, although they had just nothing to eat. They stand for us during our board exams, but what we are doing? Well, we say children are the reflections of their parents, but does that line gives us the authority to comment at the mistakes committed by the teenagers before marriage, becoming a drug addict or a terrorist. Is parents' motivation to them? No, a very big no. It's we who thinks that they are not of our interest typos, and just don't listen to them, and always goes in a race of bud that glitters, and always forget that all that glitters is not gold. Parents' advices are not just a mixture of their whole life experiences, but also with society and change of time. You are the one who makes me swift to spoil my future. Yes, you are my right treasure, dedicated to all the parents of a life. In the end, I just only want to conclude by saying that parents don't commit mistakes because they don't care, because they care so deeply. Our life is like a pair of walking feet. The foot that is forward has no pride, and foot that is backward has no shame. And they both know because their positions will have to change. So before we start blaming our parents that yes, you are wrong because of our own committing mistakes, behold, sometimes in the future, we may also suffer the same situation of our lives. So, parents are always right. It's we who makes them wrong. It's we who proves them wrong. Thank you.
Parents are brainy and older that we should consider, but to err is to human, we must always remember. Good afternoon to one and all present here. Today I, Ojal Adwal, stand against the motion and I strongly agree that parents are not always right. they lie, they err, they fight, at times they set bad examples, and all the times they are human. But according to some parents, they are always right because they think they are more knowledgeable and older, which is true. However, it is because they think that they are more knowledgeable and older, they make mistakes. Being right and thinking that you are right are two different things completely. Professional parents just don't exist. It doesn't matter what educational degree one holds or how long you have had a successful career, you are still on the job learners of parenting and making mistakes. And there is no science to it. It's all about trial and error. So how can we say that parents are always correct? Many of the times parents are not good individuals themselves, then how can we expect them to become a good parent? And the most infamous examples are of Jade Barrymore, who let her daughter have cocaine and drink at the tender age of 9. And not to forget Kate Moss, who let her daughter spend time with her crazy and drug addict boyfriend. Are parents like Tom Cruise right when they let their 4-year-old daughter wear makeup and high heels just to publicize her as a fashion symbol? These things are done just for fame, money, or simply to impose their own will on children. Then we have our own Indian breeds of parents for whom prestige is the word around which most of their lives revolve. They, like virus of 3 idiots, want their children to become engineer or doctor as if it's a permit card for them to get into the list of most honorable citizens. Well, nothing wrong with that, except the fact that the protagonist of the story, the child, never gets a chance to explore his own abilities. Had Bill Gates listened to his parents and pursued their dreams and become a lawyer, we would not have ever got Windows. A child is under constant pressure to fulfill his parents' expectations, for which he works harder and harder, almost crushing his own soul internally. And here comes the reason why the newspapers are flooded with suicidal news when the results are bad. According to a recent report, more than 1,800 childs committed suicide in past 3 years because of parental pressure. I want to know, is the marriage reason good enough for the children to kill their parents because of honor killing? I agree with my worthy opponents when they say that experience is something they cannot predict. But what about our own experience? How have we done in our life? Truly said by Oscar Wilde, experience is the name given to the years of mistake lead. And at the end, I would just like to say that parents are definitely not always right, and we should not expect them to be so. After all, they are adults like us, figuring their life of life. And again, just as ending with this quote, for all those parents who think that parents never make mistakes, that a person must be strong enough to admit his mistake, smart enough to profit from them, and strong enough to make them do it. Thanks a lot, and have a nice day.
Everything what is right may not be popular, but what is popular not necessarily always right. Now, a lot of my competition here will believe that this quotation is irrelevant to the topic which we are debating today. But I beg to differ. Now, the reason why I beg to differ is because our parents generally tend to take the more popular approach towards parenting as compared to the more correct approach towards parenting. Now, a lot of people might comprehend will disagree with me over this. I agree to the fact that our parents by far have much greater life experience, have by far much greater values as compared to us children. And I do not deny that fact. But I also reiterate the fact that our parents also get more rigid along with these life experiences because they tend to soak in less. They tend to become less susceptible to new ideas, new policies, and new processes. Now, I believe that our parents can never always be right. The reason why I believe that is if they were always right, I believe two of the greatest cultural impacts would never have happened. I'm talking about the flower power or the hippie culture of the late 1960s and 70s and the rock and roll generation of the late 1980s and early 90s. These two cultures were the basis of rebellion, were the basis of opinions for us as adolescents. Now, the reason why I say that these two cultures were iconic in nature was because these two cultures all of a sudden gave us, the children, the adolescents, a voice. Suddenly, our opinion mattered, and all of a sudden, people started asking for our opinion. Now, a lot of things might be said about these two cultures which I would not debate upon, because I do agree that they were there, but the exact reason why these cultures were there was pretty prevalent. Now, society is to blame for a lot of things. Perception about homosexuality, perception about premarital sex, perception about lots and lots of taboo subjects which will create lots and lots, which I am sure will stir a beehive here. Now these perceptions form the basis of reality towards our parents, because it is basically our parents who belong to that part of society which generally tend to believe this. I do not deny this fact that certain aspects about society is correct, but I also believe that topics which are taboo should be more widely discussed by our parents, which never happens. In fact, rather than this, we wind up having child marriages, we wind up having, we wind up taking dowry. Now these kind of things still happens in society, which even though it's frowned upon, still readily happens. Now that's shameful for lots of people because most of us are educated. The egoistical boost which generally our parents get due to certain professions is also profound, which I believe tends to suffocate the child. I believe that they suffocate the creativity out of the child. Now, a conclusion to this topic cannot happen because it would be unfair to everybody. But I would like to just say a line. I just like to say a couple of lines. The lines are: if we did not make mistakes, we'd never learn. If we would not have made mistakes, we would never have grown. If we would not have made mistakes, we would not have been here. Because a lot of our parents, I'm sure, would be pretty scared about lots of things. Now, this lines, I hope, causes an impact in a lot of people. Thanks a lot.
Now I would like to invite team number 48, Ravish Bhatia and Shubham Gandhi.
In the opinion of this house, parents are always right. The basic definition of the word parent is one who gives birth. And only then can he or she be labeled a parent. Now, since the topic is open to interpretation, in relation to the above definition of parent, our interpretation of the motion considers parent to be our country, India, and consequently, the child becomes Pakistan, to which India gave birth in 1947. The word right here would imply being right in its approach to Indo-Pak diplomacy, and the house thus becomes the house of the citizens of this world. So the motion here becomes that in the opinion of the citizens of this world, India is always right in its approach to Indo-Pak diplomacy, which would simply imply that the fort lies with Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, let's first discuss how the two nations usually discuss diplomacy. Every 5 months or so, the two nations' foreign ministers come together for a photogenic handshake to be printed in the next morning daily, followed by a talks between the two nations' PMs. Yet after every such fairy tale tea party, solutions to take step forward are buried in the hopelessness of Pakistan's unreal representation of power to the world. How does one expect a concrete diplomatic engagement if Pakistan sends out its puppets to hold talks while the real power actually lies with the army and the ISI, who, by the way, are least bothered about peace? peaceful diplomacy. Prime Minister Vajpayee's continuous visits in his regime to uphold the Indo-Pak relations were soon after turned into utter uselessness, with Pakistan-based groups, both state and non-state actors, smacking any possible diplomacy right in its face. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share something with you. The acclaimed Pakistani novelist Mohsin Hamid was asked by Dawn newspaper if he was to give up writing fiction and pen a script for a Punjabi blockbuster. He responded, and I quote, "In an operations center deep below Ida Mandi in Lahore, a fat man with a moustache receives his briefing. He is a secret agent, codenamed Sood Punjab, and his mission, if he chooses to accept it, is to infiltrate India and kidnap the one man who can revitalize Bollywood." With such a mentality, how can one expect a sane diplomatic agenda from the child? The mentality of the Pakistani diplomacy is depicted in a recent Times of India survey, according to which 56% of the Pakistani citizens believe that India was its biggest threat and not Taliban or Al-Qaeda. Yes, I agree that there have been diplomatic pauses between the two nations from both the sides. But let's just consider the reasons. While India was in some way justified in its stubbornness to hold the talks, to stop the talks, only to get the Pakistani power take an action against the figures who created the murder of a lot of people during the terrorist attacks, the explanation given by our neighbor / child was the lack of commitment of India towards the interests of skull-caved Muslims in Kashmir. I wonder, did the diplomatic honchos forget the special privileges given to those Kashmiris? Or the special reservations given to the Indian Muslim population, the population of which is even greater than the entire population of Pakistan? Ladies and gentlemen, the world's greatest democracy has validated its peaceful coexistence within the entire world, gathering support in both the UN and SAARC. Also, somehow, the entire world sees a problem with Pakistan. Given this fact, I fail to realize how India has failed in its diplomatic policy with its child Pakistan. But alas, the child licks the candy and blames the parent for toothache. With this, I address my case. Thank you.
In the opinion of the citizens of the world, India is always right in its approach to diplomacy. Continuing with the same interpretation as put forward by my colleague, my motion will primarily revolve around the defense of 2 points. India's approach to Indo-Pak diplomacy is not always right. Secondly, Pakistan's approach is not always wrong. Now you see, as diligent citizens of our country, India, we here have a natural tendency or a natural disposition to reject anything that sounds anti-Indian. So let's just get a reality check and delve into the nitty-gritties, keeping aside our nationalist tendencies. To face the true picture, historically our diplomatic ties with Pakistan have never been strong. More so, we can even call this concept of democracy or this concept of diplomacy a mere pretense. 1947, 1965, 1971, 1999, and the itinerary just goes on and on. Dialogue and diplomacy, ladies and gentlemen, are just words to keep the situation from escalating. In light of such existent notions, if you have men like Prasad Shrikant Purohit, an ex-Indian army officer, bombing the Samjhauta Express, how can one say that India is always right? If my worthy opponent here, who's by the way is just a 20-year-old enlightened youth, can tell you that the ISI and the army are the real powerhouses in Pakistan, don't the top bureaucrats and the Harvard graduates who are running the country already know that? What effort has been made at their end to initiate talks with such groups? William Durant once wisely stated that to say nothing, especially when you are speaking, is half the art of diplomacy. India today seems to be thriving on this notion. Yes, Manmohan Singh was the one to initiate cricket diplomacy during the India-Pakistan World Cup semi-final. Agreed, acceptable, kudos to him. But lack of follow-up and lack of a meaningful conversation, ladies and gentlemen, only proves that the UPA government used this as a bait to distract the media from the 2G spectrum scam. If diplomacy is deceiving your friends and not your enemies, then Pakistan seems to be learning the tricks of the trade really fast. You see, because acceptance of Manmohan Singh's proposal for the cricket diplomacy goes a long way in proving that Pakistan knows that it takes two to tango. The recent visit of Hina Rabani Khar is an icebreaker initiated by the country who is apparently always blamed for harming Indo-Pak diplomacy. Only recently, Mr. Zardari pardoned 10 Indians imprisoned in Pakistani jails for years. Now, whatever be the underlying motive for the world, this is positive diplomacy. It is also understandable that India has apprehensions about Pakistan with regard to Kashmir. Should be so because we've had a very troubled past. But one of the major problems being faced by Pakistan today is the risk of a civil war because of the Balochistan insurgency. Popular notion in Pakistan says that India is backing the Balochistan people. Now, such allegations might be true or not, but what they create is an air of apprehension in the minds of the Pakistani people. Presence of India in Afghanistan is also believed, they say it is for political reconstruction, but it is believed to be an effort by India to encircle Pakistan from the west and show off its military might. Again, such allegations might be true or not, but it creates an air of apprehension in the minds of the Pakistani people and the Pakistani government. You see, if Indian people have apprehension and they can substantiate it by facts, is it really right to just neglect the Pakistani apprehensions on the basis that they do not have any facts to support it? How then can we challenge Pakistan's approach to diplomacy? The truth is that in times of distress, apathy is actually a virtue. Internal turmoil in Pakistan has led to its citizens look for other resorts, militancy obviously being one of them. If Pakistan is a child gone astray, then maybe it's high time for the parents called India to buckle up and help to put it back on the right track. Manmohan Singh once wisely remarked that we can change our friends but not our neighbors. I guess it's high time that the realization sinks into the people and the countries prevail in combating acts of terrorism. You see, because of the blame game of who's right and who's wrong, who's always right and who's always wrong, has been going on and on for centuries and might just continue to do so. But what positive comes out of it still remains to be seen. Thank you.
Thank you, Team 48. Now that was a new interpretation of the topic. I would like to invite team number 49, Nilnadish Agarwal and Aru Batra.
Next, 22nd generation lads, Youngistan, Young Guns. These are just some of the names and some of the titles tagged to us. So whenever these watchwords are mentioned, the main motive lies in highlighting the elevated cerebral stature of today's awakening youth. Girlfriends, career, gadgets, money-making, mascots, siblings, parents, corruption, looks, booze, and yes, the latest, to shout the soul-stirring slogans at the Ramlila Maidan. Good morning, all of you. I am Nandish Agarwal, a third-year engineering student, and I will be speaking for the motion. The underlying motive of specifying all these points was to bring attention to the head-quality topics of today's youth. Parents. Yes, we are discussing parents. And yes, most of my fellow mates have tried to define what parents are or have taken the help of scriptures. But for me, parents are somebody who has no category and so they can never be generalized. 50 years of their own experience and 25 years of raising us makes them rock solid in their character, outlook, perseverance, patience, and yes, most of all, experience. Parents today are so open-minded and understands the unsaid intricacies of children that it is totally baseless to say that there is a generation gap prevailing between us. Though I am not denying